Tonight, 2 dead, 2 others still missing in a house fire in Oshawa.
So a lot of fire, a lot of screaming, a lot of glass breaking.
The search continues for those still unaccounted for after a fire tears through a stretch of homes in the early morning hours. Plus,
it just doesn't make any sense.
Why medical experts have different opinions when it comes to the province's new rules around indoor dining. And
I actually have one of the dollar bills with her face on it posted in my room.
We speak to the young recipients of this year's Viola Desmond Awards. The ceremony held tonight honoring Black female leaders making a difference in their communities. Good evening, I'm Kelda Yoon. The bodies of 2 people have been recovered at the site of a horrific fire that ripped through a row of homes in Oshawa. 2 others, meanwhile, are still unaccounted for after a day-long search. Our Greg Ross has more.
This is very difficult.
Stay back here.
At this point, Oshawa's fire chief has not released the identities of the 4 people still unaccounted for.
Yeah, 4 of them, I don't know.
This man who lives across the street says his brother rented a room on the 3rd floor of the house.
I don't even know if he's alive.
When we spoke to him, he told us police and fire crews hadn't provided much information, but he believed his 57-year-old brother was one of the 4 people they are still looking for. He says he barely had time to get his bathrobe on when he woke up just after 1 o'clock this morning to police banging on his door.
Look out. Oh, holy Christ, Bob's house is on fire. By the time I got downstairs, got dressed, Bob got this, huh? There was police there telling me, get out, get out, get out. It could blow.
It's a little too close to home for my liking.
This man, who lives just a few doors down, says he ran out when he heard all of the commotion.
I saw a lot of fire, a lot of screaming, a lot of glass breaking.
The fire chief says there were a total of 9 people in the house when the fire started.
5 residents were sent to the hospital. At this time, 1 resident remains in the hospital. The others have been released.
The damage to the house is extensive, but could have been far worse, especially considering it's in the middle of a row of attached homes.
Fire was very, very intense, very difficult for our firefighters last night.
Just before 6 p.m., fire crews were able to get into the upper levels of the home, and they removed 2 bodies. They're now waiting for the coroner to identify them. They won't be able to get into the lower levels of the home tonight, where they believe there are still 2 more bodies. They say they'll be back here tomorrow to continue this investigation. Greg Ross, CBC News, Oshawa.
We're also following an apartment fire in Bradford, where fire officials say 11 people are now in hospital, 4 with critical injuries. About 100 residents have also been displaced. It happened just before 2 p.m.
There was fire coming out of the 5th floor. People were trapped on various balconies. First crews arriving were faced with a lot of smoke and flame coming out of the 5th floor. Multiple people on the balconies. We use an aerial apparatus to rescue 11 people from the balconies. So the building will definitely not house any residents this evening.
Residents have been moved to a nearby senior center. The building will be inspected for structural damage tomorrow. The cause of the fire is not yet known. The Ford government is under fire over a pharmacy vaccination rollout that left some hard-hit neighborhoods without a shot. CBC Toronto first told you about the problem last week. Well, now there's a growing push to make sure the next phase of the program ends the disparities. Lauren Pelly explains.
These were the scenes last week in some of Toronto's affluent midtown neighborhoods.
I've been in this lineup for over, I guess, an hour and a half.
Block-long lineups to snag walk-in spots for their shots, all before this first round of AstraZeneca doses dries up. And while much of the city has easy access to pharmacy vaccinations, that's not the case in some areas like Toronto's northwest corner, a blank spot for participating pharmacies despite being hard hit by COVID-19.
How can it be that the government didn't prioritize the very hot spots where the virus was spreading the most?
At Queen's Park, the Ford government came under fire today.
Why were those neighborhoods forgotten?
They weren't forgotten. We were limited, as you know, by the number, the quantity of AstraZeneca that was ultimately provided by the federal government.
That limited quantity did make its way to Kingston, which has recorded just one death during the entire pandemic and less than 1,000 total cases of COVID-19 in the last year. Meanwhile, one of the Toronto areas with no pharmacies participating is the postal code region covering both Black Creek and Jane and Finch. It's also the top spot in the entire city for the number of COVID-19 tests coming back positive at close to 13%.
Some areas have got 10 times the rate of COVID than others, and populations. We know that some racialized groups have high rates of COVID.
This expert on the social causes of illness says the province had all the data it needed from the get-go, but didn't seem to use it.
And it's that carelessness that leads to disparities in death.
Toronto's medical officer of health also told city officials that her team looked up other pharmacies that could offer COVID-19 vaccines in hard-hit communities.
We have provided that list to the province.
Premier Doug Ford stressed the program is expanding.
We're going to double the amount of pharmacies up to 700. We have 350. Really want to focus on the Peel region, York and Toronto.
But provincial officials have yet to release new details on what pharmacies and specific neighbourhoods will be part of the next round. Lauren Pelly, CBC News, Toronto.
Long lineups continuing tonight at the Toronto Congress Centre where vaccinations are taking place. Some had to wait almost an hour to get inside.
Oh, I think it's great. I'm just anxious to get it, and you know, it's so hard to organize something like this, so I don't have any problems with standing here for a while.
I feel good about it. I don't mind lining up.
There seem to be about 40 minutes behind schedule. Good thing the weather is so good.
It's just the process is a little bit slower than I was hoping it would be, but otherwise, yeah, it's good.
The head of the city's immunization task force says the lines were made worse by unplanned staff absences. The city is working to fix the situation. A U.S. study has found the AstraZeneca vaccine provides strong protection against disease and complete protection against hospitalization and death across all age groups. Canada and dozens of other countries have authorized use of the COVID-19 vaccine, but so far not the United States. An FDA advisory committee will debate the study results before making a decision. Several European countries had stopped using the vaccine following reports some recipients developed blood clots, but they have since started using it again. Last week, the EU agency in charge of evaluating drugs concluded the vaccine doesn't raise the overall risk of blood clots. However, the agency did not rule out the possibility the vaccine could be connected to two very rare types of clots. Medical experts continue to clash over provincial rule changes for indoor dining. Regions in the orange zone can now have up to 100 people dining indoors. In the red zone, it's a maximum of 50 people. But not all doctors think that's a safe move, given the province is now in the third wave of the pandemic. Chris Glover has the latest.
Today was the busiest lunch rush Tremonti restaurant in Vaughan has had in months.
The phone has not stopped. It feels fantastic.
In red zones like York Region, the province has bumped the indoor capacity limit from 10 people to 50. But the owner of Tremonti's is choosing not to exceed 30 patrons and will continue aggressive deep cleanings.
I don't overcrowd it. I'm not greedy. I'm safe because I don't want a reputation of having COVID in my place. Not at all.
The higher capacity limits for indoor dining in orange and red zones kicked in on Saturday. Physical distancing measures remain in place, and only members of the same household can sit together, with exceptions for essential caregivers and people who live alone.
In red zones, it's difficult to imagine that is going to work. And certainly, even if it is working now, we are in a third wave. And as such, it's likely that the cases increase, and then some of those red zones may go into gray zones.
In gray zones, patios resumed this weekend, and that one household, one table rule is also true for them.
It's a recipe for the possibility of a massive third lockdown, and that's the last thing these small businesses need.
Echoing the opposition's concern, this palliative care physician in Peel.
This is actually possibly the worst possible combination of outcomes.
And yet we have local medical officers of health approving these changes.
It just doesn't make any sense. We're starting to see more and more people coming into the hospital.
He worries vaccines have not rolled out to enough people, as some hospitals report Ontario's variant-fueled third wave is resulting in younger and sicker patients.
We're not expecting the explosive growth.
York's medical officer, Dr. Kareem Kurji, supports the easing restrictions. He says contact tracing and the vaccine rollout are well in hand in his region.
Actually, if you look at York region's epidemiological data, we're actually plateauing right now.
And big news late today for restaurant workers in the province of Ontario. After initially being left off of the phase 2 vaccine rollout today, the province is saying that restaurant workers will in fact be a part of phase 2 of the COVID vaccine rollout, scheduled to begin next month. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
Restaurants Canada reacted to the news this afternoon after finding out their workers would be vaccinated in phase 2.
We just were told that it was an oversight. It's peace of mind for the employees that they know that that the government sees them as essential workers.
The government released a list of workers eligible for the vaccine in phase 2 earlier this month. It originally did not include food service workers. Roulette says the news provides comfort to restaurant employees as they continue to expand their capacity. Meanwhile, some of the city's hair salon owners are speaking out, saying keeping them closed is driving people to seek out underground services.
I've invested thousands and thousands of dollars into this industry. This is my lifestyle. And the fact that somebody is able to post a Kijiji ad now, $15 haircuts, and all my clients are starting to go to them now, and I'm kind of getting lost and I'm getting put back behind.
Carlos Bonifaz owns a barbershop at St. Clair and Dufferin. He says it would be safer if businesses like his were allowed to reopen because proper safety precautions have been put in place, unlike unregulated operations such as those in people's homes. When questioned today, the province asked for patience, saying it hopes to move Toronto and Peel into a lower level in a few weeks. Ryerson University's Viola Desmond Awards were held tonight, celebrating the achievements of Black female trailblazers. Recipients this year include Toronto Centre MP Marcy Ian and outstanding leaders in the Ryerson community, such as Juanita Stephen, Pauline Manji, and Charmaine McKenzie. The virtual ceremony also honored high school students who are already making a difference in the GTA. Natalie Collada has their stories.
Leaving the pages of our stories to fade into dust, turning our skins into doormats.
From spoken word to action, 18 years old Hannah Flores is working to make a difference through her art.
Sometimes being othered in different situations where I am the only Black person in the room, or I'm the only person who looks like me in a space, and me having to stand up for myself and command and own the space that I'm in. And that sort of transcended into my writing.
The grade 12 student has created films on Black history and staying hopeful during the pandemic. She even has her own podcast. Tonight, she was honored as one of the recipients of Ryerson University's Viola Desmond Award.
I actually have one of the dollar bills with her face on it posted in my room, and I use that and her story as a motivation for me to continue the work that I'm doing.
It's the 13th year of the award ceremony, this year hosted online.
Thank you all for being present to celebrate the outstanding Black women trailblazers who are keeping Viola Desmond's legacy of resilience and resistance alive.
The Canadian civil rights activist challenged racial segregation at a cinema in Nova Scotia in 1946 by refusing to leave a whites-only area. Her legacy lives on today, with much work still to do.
There has been a global awakening to the issues of anti-Black racism and human rights.
For the future, I'd also like to see more of that as well.
Also honored tonight, 18-year-old Nefertari Marshall. She's dedicated over 270 hours to volunteering in her community.
As a Black individual growing up, especially in the media, I didn't see many faces that looked like me. So if I can be that role model for someone else while volunteering, I think that could really change someone's life.
With hope for a better tomorrow.
It is through supporting the work and potential of Black women that we uplift those who face the double-edged sword of racism, sexism in a society originally designed to exclude women and all racialized people.
Natalie Collada, CBC News, Toronto.
If you like the weather today, similar conditions for tomorrow. I'm meteorologist Colette Kennedy. I'll explain. I'll also let you know when the wet weather will be moving in.
The Premier announced $1.2 billion for hospitals today to help manage the financial pressures caused by COVID-19.
So they can continue the incredible work they're doing now and once we've beaten this virus. Focus on our next challenge, which is tackling the growing surgical backlog.
Doug Ford says the money will help support frontline heroes. The Minister of Health adds that hospitals have lost many forms of revenue, such as parking and retail, and that this money will help ensure they remain financially stable. Ontario Liberal Party leader Stephen Del Duca laid out his vision today, should he be elected Premier.
If elected Premier, my very first act will be to stop Highway 413 once and for all in its tracks.
Del Duca says the highway will destroy wetlands and pave over the Greenbelt. Also on the Liberal Party's list of priorities, investing $8 billion over 5 years in Ontario schools. Del Duca says the money will be used to help build new schools and repair older buildings. The provincial election is slated for 2022. You're looking at a live shot of the Toronto skyline, mostly clear tonight with some cloud cover developing overnight, currently 11 degrees downtown. Let's go to Colette Kennedy now with a look at the forecast. And Colette, we had a beautiful first weekend of spring today, more of the same. It was so nice out, great way to kick off the work week.
Thanks, Kelda. Yeah, I know sometimes, Monday's not everyone's favorite day, but when you have weather like this, I guess it kind of helps you get back into it, right? Incredible conditions that we're seeing. Temperatures way above seasonal, 10. In some cases, it's approaching 15 degrees above seasonal, and it's going to stay dry as well with quite a bit of sunshine. I'll explain what's kind of happening as we go through the day tomorrow, and then things start to change. So for midweek, from Wednesday on through Friday, off and on, we're going to have some systems having an impact and bringing in some wet conditions for us. But the above seasonal temperatures, they remain in play till the end of the work or school week, and then the temperatures come down a little bit on the weekend, but they're actually still a few degrees above seasonal. We kind of don't even get back to seasonal till about next Monday. So let's talk about what those sort of numbers are. An average high for this time of year, 5.4. Your low is still, it's still below zero in those negatives. And today for Toronto, this is at Pearson, about 16 degrees and pretty mild too with our low where we started off from this morning. And speaking of some of the readings, like across the province, we're not just talking about southwestern Ontario and eastern Ontario. I mean, this went up into northern Ontario as well. Even Collingwood today, 20 degrees. So just some incredible numbers, but another 20 at Windsor and St. Catharines in there as well. So we have just a few clouds through the overnight hours. And then for tomorrow, sunshine to begin. And then we start to get in a little bit of this cloud cover coming in, increasing into the second half of the day. A lot of this will be a higher level cloud, though. So it's not going to have a real impact. Even Tuesday evening looks good. Our next system, this Texas low, will start to come in late overnight into early Wednesday morning. A shot of some wet weather, a break, and then more significant kind of bout of it as we get into the mid-morning hours, another break, and then in the evening a return. So that's sort of what I mean by that off and on, and that's just Wednesday. We're going to see another one that's going to develop and have an impact on us, and that's why right through Friday, kind of off and on wet weather. It could be much more consistent as we get towards the end of the week, too, with some of that heavier rain. 3 to 5 degrees. Your lows overnight tonight. Southwestern Ontario. Okay, look at these highs, 18, 19 degrees, mostly sunny skies. And then tonight around the GTA, slightly cooler Oshawa at 1, but we're staying above freezing here. And then tomorrow afternoon, somewhat similar to some of the highs that we saw today. Okay, St. Catharines, you might have to knock a couple of degrees off there. And then looking ahead, there's your sort of off and on wet weather, and also towards the end of the week, that sort of gentle cool down I mentioned, Kelda, and then it gets even cooler as we head towards Monday.
All right. Thanks so much, Colette.
The weather is brought to you by Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. We test, so it runs. It's hard to stop a train.
Finally tonight, do you have a binder of hockey or Pokemon cards buried somewhere in your basement? They could be worth a lot of money. The business of collecting and selling cards has been booming during the pandemic. In some places across North America, stores have even been robbed and fights have broken out. Talia Ricci has more on the card craze.
Hopefully, some of these kids held on to their beloved Pokemon cards, like Logan Fournier did.
And I came across my old Pokemon collection. And I was like, oh, this is crazy. Everything's like sleeved in perfect condition.
He never expected a trip to his mom's basement would spark a successful business, launched during the pandemic.
If you guys have questions, please just ask them while I'm doing this.
Some of the cards are going for like $5,000, $10,000. And I was like, this is weird. Like, there's something here. So we opened the store, and honestly, it just accelerated from there.
From Pokemon to sports cards, shops say the demand in the last few months has skyrocketed.
Almost as soon as the pandemic started last year, sports cards started booming. A huge comeback for hockey and vintage sports cards. Any of the big Hall of Fame names, if you have any of those cards in good condition, you're looking at a lot of money. A Wayne Gretzky card just sold for 1.3 million. Sales have gone up maybe 1,000%, tenfold. So yeah, it's been very, very busy for us.
Which I bought for, I think, $350,000.
Live streams where YouTubers and celebrities open packs have created a certain sense of community at a time when people can't gather to play and trade. This year also marks Pokemon's 25th anniversary.
People obviously have more time to spend on their hobbies by virtue of the fact that we're sort of in a lockdown situation. Card collecting is something which we can do at home.
If you do end up coming across an old binder of sports cards or Pokemon cards in your basement, experienced collectors recommend looking up the cards online to get a sense of how much they're worth, and then getting them graded, which proves the condition they're in.
For me, it was just like a nice outlet to kind of like just cool off. As a kid, I was just like, I got immersed in the world and I really liked that. It was just like fun to play.
Oh, got the trainer.
You actually got a really good card.
Nice.
I think it'll continue to grow. Hopefully, it'll just get passed down from generation to generation.
A nostalgic hobby that continues to thrive in a digital world. Talia Ricci, CBC News, Toronto.
And that is our show for you tonight. Thank you so much for watching. Dwight Drummond has your next local newscast tomorrow at 6. I will see you back here tomorrow night at 11. Have a great night, everyone.